This evening I'm going to read Hojoki, which is an ancient Japanese classic. Hojoki means account of a 10-foot square hut. The main character here is Kamo no Chomei, but I wanted to say, before I begin, a great thank you to my teacher who didn't want to be named this evening. That teacher is a Shinto priest and an expert in Bunbukan culture. So coming to the main character again, Kamo no Chomei. Kamo no Chomei lived in the city of Kyoto and was born in 1155 and died in 1216. He was a monk, a poet and a social philosopher, privileged in a way in that he grew up in a wealthy family in Kyoto, so 800 years ago, and got to study poetry and classics with his family. I'm going to turn to a short account of the three main parts of the book. And so this book really is, there's so much to take in, but in essence it's a social chronicle and a personal testimony from Chomei. It can be divided into three main sections. And so the first section is a series of calamities really, chaos and disaster that overtook the beautiful city of Kyoto when Chomei was about. So fire, hurricane, plague and famine overtook the city, and at some point there was an imperial decree for everybody to move out of the city of Kyoto, literally pack their homes down and float their homes downriver to Kobe, sort of south-central Japan on the island of Honshu. The second section of the book is a scathing social commentary on the human condition, arising even such that we found people stealing from temples for firewood and death and destitution on the street. The third section of the book is Hojoki, the point at which Chomei moved to the hills above Kome for refuge and rest and peace, and I'll focus on that section. In the 40 years or so since I reached the age to understand the heart of things, I've witnessed many awful happenings. One night long ago, it would be the 28th day of the 4th month of the 3rd year of Engun, a loud wind was blowing. At 8 o'clock a fire broke out in the southeast of the city, then spread north and west. The fire finally reached the south gate of the palace. This gate, together with the State Chamber, University Hall and Office of the Interior, all burned to ashes in one night. They say it started at Higuchi Tominakoji, in the lodgings of a dance company. The wind blew wildly, this way, that way, and the fire spread like an unfolding fan. Houses far away engulfed in smoke. Closer by, hungry flames licked the ground. Sky crimson all about, cinders flashing, lit by fire. Flames driven by unrelenting gusts flew whole blocks. Who, in all this, would not be scared to death? Some suffocated by smoke fell upon the ground. Some swallowed by flames died at once. Some, scarce able to save themselves, lost all their worldly goods. I move now through the calamities, passing the earthquake and the famine directly on to the plague. There was hope things might improve the following year, but then on top of it all, a great plague broke out. Stood the world upon its head. Everyone was starving. Time passed and things grew worse. People seemed like fish in a shrinking pool. Decorously dressed folk in hats and gaiters went from house to house, frantically begging. Even as you watched, stricken people walking by would suddenly fall. So many bodies of the starved lay in the streets, hard by the wall of houses. Since these were not removed, there rose a dreadful stench. It was almost that one couldn't bear to look upon these poor people. And so a dreadful time. I move now to section 2, which is really the section of A scathing commentary really on the situation that the city found itself in by Chomei. So as we see, our life is hard in this world. We and our houses, fleeting and hollow. Many troubles flow from your status and social rank. The lowly man who lives beside the man of power cannot openly rejoice, even when glad. Even when sorrow becomes intolerable, he never can cry out. His anxious air, his constant fearful trembles, and those are those of a sparrow near the nest of a hawk. The poor man who lives near the rich is shamed by shabbiness. He goes in and out by day or night with self-effacing air. He sees the envy of his wife, children and servants. He knows the rich despise them all, and his heart is troubled. Never, never can he find peace. If you live among crowds, you cannot flee when fire breaks out. If you wish to live far from others, travelling is hard and there is danger of fees. Men of means have much to fear also. Those with none know only bitterness. If you entrust yourself to the care of others, you will be owned by them. If you care for others, you will be enslaved by your own solicitude. If you conform to the world, it will bind your hand and foot. So where to find a place to rest a while? Where should we live and how? And how bring even short-lived peace to our hearts? And so to the final section, Hojoki times. As for me, I came into property from my father's mother. I lived there a long while, but then came death and my family split, and I came down in the world. Memories were warm, but I could not stay, and after 30, by myself, I built a house 1/10 the size of my former home. I built a simple living space, but had no means to build what most would think a proper house. I put up outer walls, but could not afford a gate. I set up bamboo poles as a shelter for my cart. When it snowed, or when the wind blew, my house felt precarious. It was near the river, so danger from flooding always loomed. The place was always overrun by fees. In much this way, with often troubled mind, I struggled on for 30 years in this unkind world. In this time, by my best intentions foiled, I came to understand my hopeless luck. Therefore, in my 50th spring, I retired from the world. I had no rank, no revenues, so were the worldly ties. In idleness, I lay down on Mount Ohara, clouds my pillow. And some 5 springs and autumns went by. Then, well in my 6th decade, I became a wayfarer, raising rude shelter, like an old silkworm spinning one last cocoon. Unlike the house of my Middle Ages, this not even 1/100th of the size. The fact is, I got older. My houses got smaller. As a house, it is unique, 10 feet by 10. The height no more than 7. With no commitment to any one place, I laid no claim to the land. I laid planks upon the ground and covered it simply. The joints are held with bamboo hasps. This is so. I can quickly move if something should displease me. No trouble to rebuild, for it would just fill 2 carts, the only cost the carter's fee. And so I hid myself away, deep in the hills of Hino. On the east side of the hut, I have added a 3-foot awning and used the space below to strip and burn brushwood. By the south wall, I laid down a bamboo mat, and west of that, a shelf for offertory goods. On the north side, behind a screen, an image of Amida, and next to it Fujian. In front of them, Lotus Sutra. On the eastern side, a bedding of dried bracken for the night's rest. In the southwest, a bamboo ledge with 3 black leather-lined baskets for poetry and music and works like the Oju Yoshu. Next to the shelf against the wall, a koto and a biwa, known as a folding koto and a jointed biwa. Such is my little home in this world. Outside to the south, a water pipe with stones to hold the water. A wood nearby provides twigs and kindling in abundance. The hills are called Toyama, and spindle trees shade the paths. The valley is thick with trees, but I have a view of the western heavens to focus on for meditation. In spring, wisteria rippling like waves, looming like holly purple cloud also to the west. In summer, cuckoos as they chatter on, I ask them to be sure to guide me through the mountain paths of death. In autumn, the voices of cicadas fill my ears. They seem to grieve the husk of a world. Then in winter, snow. It settles just like human sin and melts in atonement. When in no mood for chanting, nor caring to read sutras, I can choose to rest. I can be lazy if I like. No one here to hinder me, no one here in whose eyes to feel ashamed. I took no vow of silence, yet perforce observe one, as I am alone. I need not try so hard to obey my commandments, little chance to break them here. In the evening when the wind blows through the kutsara tree and makes its leaves dance, I think of the Yinjo river and play, imitating Gentotoku. When my mood takes me, again and again I play the song of autumn breezes to the wind in the pines, or flowing water to the sound of the stream. Though little skilled, I do not play to please another's ear. I play just for myself and sing to give sustenance to my own heart. There is a simple hut of brushwood at the foot of the hill where the mountain keeper lives, and there is a little boy who sometimes visits. When all is still, I walk with this young companion. He is 10 and I am 60, so the difference is great. Yet we both delight. We pick buds and shrubs and gather bulbs and herbs, or go to the fields at the foot of the hill and gather fallen ears of rice and make different shapes. When the day is fine, we climb to the hilltops and look at the sky. Above my former home, we can see Kawata Hills, Fushimi, Toba, Hatsukashi. A place of beauty has no owner, so there is nothing to spoil the pleasure. When we fit and feel like going farther, we walk the hills through Sumiyama, beyond to Kasatori. We visit Iwama. I make pilgrimage to Ishiyama. Or we make our way across the fields to Uwazu and visit the former home of the poet Sumimura, or cross Tagami River to the grave of Saramoru. Coming back, depending on the season, we look at cherry blossoms, view maples, pluck bracken, or to take home. On quiet nights I recall friends while looking at the moon through the window. I listen to the distant cries of monkeys and tears wet my sleeves. Fireflies in the bushes then appear like fishermen's braziers off on Makanamasha. The morning rain feels like a storm beating on the leaves. When I hear the tuneful cries of copper pheasants, they sound just like my mother and father. When deer from higher up come tamely down to me, I realise how far I am from the world. Awakening at night and poking embers from the ashes, this old man finds his company. The mountains do not haunt me, so I enjoy the hooting of the owl. Each passing season brings its own enchantment. Of course, a more perceptive man would find much more to charm. When I moved here, I did not mean to stay this long, but 5 years have now passed. This rough shelter has become my home. Rotting leaves pile up on the roof, moss grows on the lower parts. Occasional word of the capital tells me many lords have passed away while I was hidden here in the hills. Others too of lesser rank, numbers we can never know. I wonder how many houses burned down in constant fires. But nothing happens here in my little hut. Small as it is, this is room to sleep at night and sit by day, space enough for one man. The hermit crab prefers a tiny shell, aware of its needs. Ospreys live by the rocky coast, fearing the world of man. And so with me, I know my needs and I know the world. I wish for nothing. I do not work to acquire things. People in the world do not build houses to suit their real needs. They build houses for wives, children, retinues, or they build for friends and those around them. Some build houses for masters and teachers, and even for their treasures. When there is something to be done, employ your body. When you need to go somewhere, use your feet. This too is hard, but not as hard as worrying about the horse and the saddle and the ox and the cart. Now I divide my body and I give it a twofold purpose. My hands are my servant, my legs are my carriage. This suits me well. My heart knows my strength's limit and makes me rest when I am tired. I work again when ready. I exert myself, but never to excess. So even when fatigued, I'm not distressed. Always walking, always working makes the spirit strong. Why rest without need? Using others is a sin. Why should I wish to use another? Just the same with food and clothing. My clothes are arrowwort. My bedding is hemp. I make do with what I find for dress. Starwort from the fields, berries from the hills are all I need for sustenance. Not mingling with society, my appearance doesn't matter. My food being meagre tastes all the sweeter. I do not speak of the pleasures to reproach the rich. I just compare my past life with the present. Reality depends on your mind alone. If your mind is not at peace, what use are riches? The grandest hall will never satisfy. I love my lonely dwelling, this one-room hut. Sometimes I go to the capital and I am aware that I look like a begging monk. But when I return, I pity those who seek the dross of the world. If you doubt my words, consider fish and birds. Fish do not hate the water, but then none can know the happiness of a fish unless he is one. Birds love the woods. If you're not a bird, you will not know its truths. A quiet life is much the same. How would anyone know it without living it? The moon of my life is setting these days. The life now left me sinks into the hills, and any time now I may descend to the river below. To what end do I pour this out? Buddha taught we must not be attached. Yet the way I love this hut is itself attachment. Thanks everyone. Sweet dreams.